happy.
Presley also found the support she needed through the Lotus Project. She moved to Houston 2 years ago.
That you chose Lotus.
I tried to do it without help. And when I got here, things got increasingly difficult to be on my own with 2 children, sleeping on the couch at a friend's house. And you have to make that decision, if not for yourself, for your children, to try to make it better.
Presley has gone back to school and will graduate in December with a degree in business.
I feel like my purpose now is to serve my fellow women veterans, to help them get to the point that I am now, which is a better understanding of the issues that I've had, to resolve those things, and just to be there for support. That's all we really need, is the support and the acknowledgement.
We will return after these messages.
Traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder are often referred to as the unseen wounds of war. Among scientists and doctors, there is an understanding of how to diagnose and treat those who suffer from it. But in recent years, another kind of unseen wound has surfaced, a wound of the soul. It's called moral injury.
Moral injury is the inner anguish that a good person can experience from something they did, something they failed to do, or something they witnessed that violates their core moral foundations.
While moral injury can happen to anyone at any time, in the context of war, it is inevitable.
That inner anguish can be pretty intense if the experience is intense. With the sort of craziness of war, you can lose control and start killing people when you shouldn't be, or you may be ordered to torture. There's a story of a Mormon woman, very religious, who was in the military, and she was at Abu Ghraib. And one of the ways they tortured Muslim men was that it was one of the greatest humiliations was to be naked in front of a strange woman, a non-Muslim woman or a stranger. So they put her down as a tank, and they stripped the men naked with blindfolds on, and then she would be standing there and they'd take the blindfolds off so that they would be humiliated. She was so devastated by having to do that she killed herself.
While moral injury is as old as war itself, it is a new field of study. Some believe it is tied to the high rate of suicide in military veterans.
I think the moral injury itself is an indication of a person's humanity. That, for me, a human being could be so upset, so devastated by something they'd done to violate that core sense of love and care for others, that they would kill themselves. It says something about the power of that spirit, that it would rather kill the body than give up that core humanity.
Those suffering from moral injury may have symptoms similar to post-traumatic stress, such as depression and suicidal thoughts. They may self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. However, the root causes are different. PTSD is fear-based, while moral injury stems from feelings of guilt and shame.
A lot of them will say things like, God will never forgive me for this. I don't know how I actually could do that. I can't live with myself. I'm trying to forget. I do, drugs every day. I drink every day so I can forget.
There is no clinical diagnosis for moral injury, and it cannot be healed with medicine.
For people who are really struggling with this really profound sense that they're not good anymore, saying it's a psychological problem isn't quite enough. Treatment can help, but really it's a spiritual problem.
According to Brock, to rebuild a moral identity, you need the support of the community. Religious institutions are in a unique position to help.
Every religious tradition has some way, maybe not a very good way at this point, but some way to understand and process people who violate their spirit, their core moral conscience. In Buddhism, it's called suffering or attachment. You're attached to things in the wrong way. In Christianity and Judaism, it's usually called sin. So there's some kind of language in which you feeling like you're not a good person anymore, that's something faith understands.
In 2009, Brock co-founded the Soul Repair Center at Bright Divinity School in Fort Worth, Texas. In addition to research and public education, the center trains clergy and clinicians on ways to help those suffering with moral injury.
It's a matter of drawing them back to, okay, where was that set of values? Where did that come from? What was it based on? Was it real or imagined? Is there really good in this world that can be violated? And if it's violated, how do we get back to the good?
If the religious leader and also a religious community of faith can present themselves and say, there's nothing that can't be forgiven by an almighty, forgiving, loving God. I know you may have trouble believing that now, but let's hang together and tell me what you think might be unforgivable in your situation. And I'll listen, and we'll talk it through. We'll go through this together.
Moral injury is complex and may not present itself immediately.
Some of the VA people are even saying that moral injury is the worst affliction because it's more like the slow burn underneath the fires of PTSD. So that little slow burn can burn a long time.
I remember the values we had, and they were good values.
Michael Killam is a Vietnam veteran.
You treated someone like you wanted to be treated. You respected everyone, not because you had to, because you wanted to. Those values that we had, the only way we could get them was to give them. That's the way we learned. And when I came back from Vietnam, they were all gone.
Drafted at the age of 18, he was a door gunner with the U.S. Army.
I grew up on a working ranch, and I was pretty proficient with guns. I didn't like killing. I didn't like that at all. Now, on the farm, in the ranch, you had to kill animals. I don't know what it is about humans. I really thought I'd crossed some kind of invisible line.
4 months into his tour of duty, he was captured and tortured by the Viet Cong. He escaped 3 days later and returned to combat. He served 2 years and 3 days. When he returned home, he was a different man.
I don't know what it is about war, but my daddy never told me about war. My granddad never told me about war. And now I know why. I've never told anybody about war. I think I lost myself. I think my soul was gone. I think everything inside me was taken out.
He suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, but it was undiagnosed for much of his life.
I was one of the ones who would have flashbacks. And when I experienced a flashback, I was back. I was there. And they always ended the same. I was in a squad car with the lights on, and they put me in jail, and when they did that, it's like I got captured all over again. I was going to fight. It just built on all that negativity.
In addition to post-traumatic stress, he was also living with moral injury.
I'd catch myself every now and then. Something would come to me like a little bit of conscience, and I'd push it way back down again. I wouldn't let it surface.
He self-medicated with heroin and alcohol.
I became such a sociopath that I didn't care one way or the other what people thought of me. We were all sick, they were just like me. Nearly every one of us had been divorced at least once or twice. We all isolated. We couldn't go to a Walmart. We couldn't go shopping. We didn't like to be around people.
8 years ago, Killam finally got treated for his addiction and is in long-term recovery. With the help of the Soul Repair Center, he is hoping to reclaim that part of him that was lost in the war.
I'm a lot different than I was 8 years ago, a lot different. In fact, night and day. But it's slow and it's over time, but I really do believe now what I lost was my soul.
Today, Killam is a program manager for Veteran Services in Tarrant County, Texas. He hopes his story helps his brothers and sisters in arms.
I want these kids to know that there's absolutely no thing that you have done that's going to alienate you from the human race. I've been there, I've done that, and yeah, it's going to take a miracle, big deal. I mean, I've seen them happen, I've been part of them, and if you do this, you can't help but give back.
To view this program and others like it, go to cbsnews.com/religion and culture.